Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. What happens after you have endured irreversible, medicalized, quote, gender transition as a teenager, and then you grow up? Today, we are bringing you an exclusive first-person special featuring Independent Women's Forum ambassador and detransitioner Prisha Mosley, along with Kelsey Bolar, who's of the Independent Women's Forum. She's the director for storytelling. Welcome to the show, Prisha, and Kelsey, welcome back.
Thank you.
for having us.
Yeah, great to see you. And Prisha, thank you so much for doing this. Just reading your story, I was absolutely horrified by what happened to you. And I know you're still dealing with the effects of it. Let's just go back to when you first had the misfortune of sitting with somebody who, rather than doing no harm to you, decided to intervene in your life medically because you said at the time you were having some gender confusion. How old were you, and how did you first sort of start toying with the idea that you might not actually be a girl?
So medicalization for me began at 16 in my nutritionist's office, where I was seeing the nutritionist to be treated for my eating disorder. But I had by this time been convinced by activists and trans-identifying adults on social media, particularly Tumblr, that I had an eating disorder and all of my other problems because I had been born in the wrong body. So the visits to my nutritionist turned into visits where the pediatric endocrinologist came to see me in secret. And I remember that my eating plan with my nutritionist had changed, and it had caused me to start my period again, which I wasn't having due to the malnutrition. And I shared that I believed I had gender dysphoria from my period. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it, like apparently girls were supposed to. And I shared this information and suddenly began being seen by the pediatric endocrinologist, who gave me a shot at first to stop my period, and then months later, I was on testosterone.
So when you say this started at 15 and that you were seeing the pediatric endocrinologist in secret, what do you mean? How could that happen?
So yeah, at 15, I discovered transgender ideology online on Tumblr through the anorexia community, actually, where I was spending a lot of time lamenting about my eating disorder and my feelings. And all of this, was coming to light with a nutritionist who I actually believed was trying to ruin my life and sabotage me by making me gain weight. And then when this dysphoria idea came out, I just started seeing the endocrinologist in the office where I was seeing the nutritionist. And I just shared my feelings. And I started the depot to stop my periods, but to start the testosterone, I had to get the letter of recommendation. And the letter of recommendation is just a letter you get from a certified therapist, hopefully certified anyway. And once you have this letter, it unlocks your access to whatever gender drugs and procedures you want. So I was recommended to someone who could write me that letter, and then turned around and returned to my endocrinologist and got testosterone.
Oh my God, all as a minor. You're not even you can't even drive.
Yeah, that's correct. And I was really failing to do anything, not just drive. I mean, driving was way beyond the scope of what I couldn't do. I was struggling to eat. I was struggling to do anything other than sleep or leave my room or any of that. I was very unwell. But of course, my doctor said that all of that was caused by being born in the wrong body.
It's amazing. Right now, we just found out that the U.S. Supreme Court is taking up this case in which these types of medical procedures for kids, like the hormones and the puberty blockers, the bans on those in certain states. And now the Supreme Court's going to weigh in on whether we can have those bans. I honestly believe, I'll actually bring Kelsey in on this one. I believe, Kelsey, the vast majority of adults in America have zero idea what puberty blockers into cross-sex hormones can actually do to a minor. I think they're pretty clue. They're like Asa Hutchinson, who was the former governor of Arkansas, who ran for president for 2 minutes, who's out there saying, well, yeah, it should be between, there's a Republican saying it should be between the parent and the child, not understanding you have a very high likelihood of sterilizing your child, not to mention diminishing or ruining their ability to enjoy sexual behaviors and so on. And that's just scratching the surface.
Megyn, I'm so glad you brought up that side effect, that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones can actually impact a child's ability to go on as an adult to have a normal functioning sex life. What kind of parent would want to rob their child of that opportunity? And then, of course, you have the fertility concerns, which I know is part of the reason we're here today to talk to Prisha, because she's really one of the first detransitioners who's willing to speak publicly about what happens when you unexpectedly do get pregnant after years of cross-sex hormones and irreversible surgery. And that's not to mention all the other side effects. Again, I think all the science and research and evidence is becoming very clear at this point. It's all getting exposed as fraudulent. But unfortunately, there are powerful institutions that are embedded into our culture that are making it very difficult for any of this to be reversed. Children are still, as we speak, going on to get these puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries, actually with very little, if any, gatekeeping. Prisha had to get that letter of recommendation, but I've talked to many detransitioners where that wasn't the case. And we really do have to have an honest conversation about these pretty horrific side effects that we're only now starting to fully understand as detransitioners like Prisha come to be adults, enter their childbearing years. Sadly, we're going to hear more stories like Prisha's.
The Supreme Court needs to uphold this ban. The lower court actually upheld the ban as lawful, constitutional, and the Supreme Court is taking it for review, which I don't really love that they see a need for it. It means that 4 justices on the court voted for for I'm sure it was the 3 libs, and either Gorsuch, who voted with the libs on Title VII rights, for you can't not hire a person because they're trans, or Roberts. But we'll see. It doesn't mean they're going to strike it down. But right now, 4 have said we want to review it, and that's going to go up next term. So Prisha, back to you. Before we move on to what happened, is it true that in your very first meeting with this endocrinologist, they mentioned surgery?
Not with the endocrinologist, with the gender therapist who was providing the letter of recommendation for testosterone. The endocrinologist didn't necessarily specialize in just transgender treatments, actually also specialized in helping people with eating disorders. But the gender therapist was just a gender therapist. And when I went to obtain the letter of recommendation to receive the testosterone, it was a really short, 15-minute appointment with both of my parents. And I remember walking in and I saw my letter of recommendation already typed up on the laptop she had, just without my name filled in. And come to find out, this was actually a boilerplate letter that was just stolen from online, ready to be filled in with my name. But it was a very short appointment. But even in that short amount of time, surgery was brought up. I was told to come back for a letter of recommendation for top surgery and even for bottom surgery following that. And I was
my goodness. You're a minor. So they're setting you on a path where they're going to stop your female puberty. They're going to put you on male testosterone. They're potentially going to cut off your breasts, which I know they did, and they refer to it as top surgery. And it's a double mastectomy, a radical surgery that is not necessary on 2 healthy breasts, and potentially even try to remove your clitoris and your vagina and reconstruct something that they would tell you would bear some resemblance to a penis. I mean, this is barbaric. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And so I assume your parents were told the same lie that all the parents are told, which is it's an alive son or a dead daughter.
Yeah. And I was in the room when they said that, of course, which spurred on my delusions. I believed this was the reason I wanted to die and had been wanting to for so long. And, my parents were 2 people who had already been dealing with a suicidal child with multiple attempts. It was cruel manipulation of them.
So you go through with this medicalization insofar as you did the hormones and you had a double mastectomy. And then what happened? Like what happened to you after all of that? Was the light bulb starting to go off that this was not the answer to your problems, but the cause of more of them?
Yeah, I just wasn't getting better. And the good things weren't lasting long enough and were well overridden by the bad things. I'll be honest, when I cut off my breasts and I could walk around and not be touched on my breasts or looked at there, I thought I was experiencing gender euphoria. When I genuinely believed that I was going to transform into a boy and never be harassed again or have any problems again, I felt hopeful, but it was all a delusion, a farce, a false hope, and a lie. And that made it so much worse when I realized that, because I had been lied to. But, I was in pain a lot from the testosterone, and I continued to be in pain, but it was worse while I was still taking it. And I have emails to my endocrinologist, and I was telling her, I'm in pain. And she would say, we're inducing male puberty and growing pains hurt. And then after years and years and years, the pain didn't subside. I was like, well, my original puberty wasn't this painful or this long lasting. So I just eventually quit the testosterone because I just couldn't take the pain, and I wasn't getting better.
So at this point, how old were you when you started to detransition?
I honestly don't even know. And I also want to say detransitioning was not when I quit testosterone. Detransition, at least in my opinion, and of probably any of the public detransitioners you ask, it's a mental act. There are plenty of people who have trans identities who stop medicalization for one reason or another, be it, loss of insurance or lack of money or just their health. And that's not detransition. Detransition is a mental reconciliation with your natal sex and the realization that you can't do anything to change it, nor do you need to do anything to make it be so. You're just a boy or you're just a girl. So that didn't happen until October, when I put out that video, not last October, but the year before. I had quit the testosterone, and I did that cold turkey and withdrew from it and everything, and finally found a dialectical behavioral therapist to treat the borderline personality disorder, which was the real issue. And through some sort of self-awareness that came from terrible withdrawal and also having the type of therapy I needed, the mental act became possible.
Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. I mean, thank God that happened to you. You saved yourself. You listened to your body, to your heart, to your soul, to God, and you saved yourself. And then you got a miracle, but it wasn't easy. You are one of the few who did manage to get pregnant, notwithstanding what had been done to you, being pumped full of male hormones, being deprived of your female adolescence and transition into womanhood, having your breast chopped off, and somehow, well, I mean, we know how, but amazingly, you had a miracle happen to you, I think, and you found yourself pregnant. So talk about that moment when you saw the pregnancy test and, saw what we all see, which is like the 2 lines, and you can't believe it even when you haven't gone through what you've gone through.
Gosh, yeah. So my doctor had asked me, due to a missed period, if I could possibly be pregnant, to which, I laughed and said it was impossible, but I found myself, feeling paranoid throughout the day. So I had one pregnancy test from a long time ago that I had taken because I don't know, wanted that to be possible, but it wasn't. And I wasn't using any sort of birth control or anything until this point, to try to prevent it, because it just wasn't happening. But I started birth control finally to try to heal my hormones because I had a doctor who was willing to prescribe it. And so I took this test and it said pregnant. So then I got two more. I got another regular one and then one that would say it electronically, like the word pregnant. And they both said pregnant. And I sent a picture to my boyfriend and asked him if my eyes were working. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was utterly shocked. I was wondering how I could have like three false positives and what like chemical could be in the air in my house or something. I mean, it seemed realistic than my being pregnant.
Wow. And yet, notwithstanding that blessing, you've been through it. I mean, you have been through it. So talk about how the experience of being pregnant was different for you given what they did.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, emotionally and mentally incredibly traumatic, in a lot of different ways. I feel guilty about it, but I spent the beginning of my pregnancy sort of like suicidal. I thought that my baby was going to be sick and made out of bad material and harmed. And I'm very lucky that my child just happened to be male because this could be worse if he was female. He was large and I had to take medicine to try and prevent that, and it still happened. And I had to take a lot of medicine because my hormones continue to be imbalanced with low estrogen and progesterone and high testosterone. But my estrogen and progesterone did start getting higher naturally with the pregnancy as well as the prescriptions. But this led to, being hyper-emetic, and I threw up every single day and night, all the time, like for 9 months. I actually did not stop throwing up until the second he was out of me. Like I was laying on my back and throwing up on the operating table, and I started throwing up at like 5 weeks. So that was insane. And
There was
there's
something with the
the
size of your hips.
oh yes. There's the atrophy issues, which made it so I had to have a C-section. So that means, mentally and emotionally preparing for another surgery, which I mean, it was shocking to find out all of a sudden I was, 9 months away from a major abdominal surgery. And I had no choice because, the atrophy isn't just vaginal. So it wasn't just a risk of tearing and I could choose to possibly go through that. It's like full-blown pelvic atrophy. And with the eating disorder and then starting testosterone at the age in which I did, my hips aren't fully apart. So he just wouldn't fit with his big size and my small size there. It just was impossible. So I had to have a surgery again. And then, the chest issue, is probably
the chest issue is addressed in this piece put out by the IWF on your story. And there's a clip that we've pulled. Kelsey, I'll ask you about this. You put this film together where you're talking about now, thank God your son has been born and he's healthy, but you're struggling with who you are and what might have been. Here it is in SOT 2.
I know a lot of women do not breastfeed, and that's fine. I'm just sad that I don't get to choose that. And it's not even just the breastfeeding part. My chest is hard and flat and not soft for him, and it's numb for me. And I know he'll feel me, but my chest isn't soft and pillowy the way it's supposed to be, and I have hair on it, and I have scars on it, and when he's there, I won't feel anything. I try not to, but I think a lot about the fact that if I held my baby or if I set my chest on fire, it would feel like the same exact thing. Nothing.
Boy, before I go to you on that, Kelsey, Prisha, how has it been now that he's been born? That was a clip when you were pregnant.
I don't like to just be depressing, but I'm honest. And it's been worse. Worse. I had been going to therapy for months to cope with the fact that I was going to be numb. I didn't know that I was also going to be in pain. Shortly after I took him home, I started having this problem with my chest. His crying and the smell of the donor breast milk that was given to me by kind women who care about the fact that my ability to feed my son was taken away, started causing hormonal reactions in what is apparently leftover breast tissue in my chest, which I didn't know. I mean, I need like an ultrasound or something in my chest because I don't know what's going on. I'm numb on the top of my chest, and I continue to be unable to feel on my skin or him or myself or my boyfriend or anyone. But there's like chest tissue that is becoming engorged and filling with milk that is trapped in between scar tissue that's under my chest. I got these like rocks in my chest. When it happens, like you can see it physically, like my chest getting large rocks in it, but it's not two like breasts, like it's little rocks and lumps, and they're hot and they're painful, and you can physically see it. Even my scars on the outside look different in some places where I had rocks under them because they stretched and tore on the first time that it happened. And I didn't expect that. I had no idea because no one knew, no one knows anything.
Yeah, no one knows anything. The story, just for the listening audience, Kelsey is told, you can see it at youtube.com/independent women's forum, and it's called Identity Crisis, Prisha's story in more full detail. But I know, you and I both know, Kelsey, that this is not disclosed on the preformed approval letters that are waiting on the doctor's computers when young women like Prisha walk in. It's just, oh, you think you're a man? Great, you're a man. This isn't disclosed. Any of this, what is going to happen to these children?
Well, Prisha's right. It's not disclosed because doctors don't necessarily know. They're not necessarily able to predict that this is going to happen because this is all a huge medical experiment. And not only did Prisha have to go through this as a young, vulnerable, mentally ill teenager, she's now having to go through a second medical experiment of being one of the first detransitioners to get pregnant after hormones and surgery, and then have to learn about these complications as they come, ask her doctors, and hear her doctors bluntly tell her, I don't know. And Prisha, as she said, that's not what I want to hear, but at least it's an honest answer this time, because as they were prescribing the cross-sex hormones, as they were surgically removing her breasts, they did act like they knew everything. They did act like this was going to be this magic wand to cure all of Prisha's problems. Sadly, it's only made her life more difficult, and it's so unfair. You know, I think any of us mothers can relate. We know exactly what Prisha's talking about. She hears her baby cry. Her body knows what to do. Her milk is coming in. And because this doctor removed her breasts, not only removed her breasts, but surgically removed her nipples and reattached them to different parts of her body, the milk has nowhere to go. Imagine how traumatizing that is. It's hard enough for any mother who gets things like mastitis. Imagine how traumatizing that is for Prisha every day of her new motherhood journey right now, dealing with this. It's not fair. It should have never happened, and it should never happen to anybody else.
Oh, I completely agree. I'm infuriated by the fact they did this to you, Prisha. You were a young girl with some psychological challenges who needed therapy. You didn't need these gruesome doctors cutting you up. This is outrageous, and I'm thrilled you filed a lawsuit. Thrilled. And you're actually winning. You achieved a big victory just a month ago. Tell us about it.
Oh gosh, that was really insane. Thank you for bringing it up. I couldn't talk about it, while it was happening because I don't know, lawsuits are crazy and all of that. And it's so stressful. But I was almost 8 months pregnant, and I had my lovely and wonderful boyfriend drive me all the way from Michigan to North Carolina while I was that pregnant, and throwing up in like every single state. And yeah, I made it, and I listened in person as they said what they said about me, things I expected and things that, weren't as bad as things I'm told online all the time anyway. But, things that defended what happened to me and who did it. And I listened to my lawyers work very hard on my behalf. And I listened to the fact that they were familiar with my case and what happened to me, and they listened to me and what I say. And that's a nice feeling. And I was able to do it, even though it was hard, and I cried and I threw up there too. But it worked out. And I'm back home with a deliberation that came much quicker than expected too. We were told to wait like 8 to 12 weeks, and it came in days. And it was incredible.
So your case goes forward, and you're represented by Campbell Miller Payne, which is that Texas law firm we've told our viewers about in the past that is dedicated to handling these cases. And if there's one thing Americans respond to, it's massive judgments against wrongdoers. And that's what's happened here. This medical industrial complex that's taking advantage of our children to line their pockets won't stop, no matter what the Supreme Court says or does, until the lawyers make them stop.
Yeah.
The lawyers who are actually trying the cases and bringing them, not the ones sitting in the robes. Prisha, thank you. Thank you for telling this story. God bless you in your young motherhood. It's stressful for any mom who just has a baby, and you have extra challenges coming your way, and you also have our prayers. Thanks for telling your story. And Kelsey, thanks. Good to see you again, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, don't forget, you can find out more about Prisha's story in IWF's documentary series, Identity Crisis, a detransitioner's pregnancy story. It's very rare for this to happen. It's available to watch now at youtube.com/Independent Women's Forum, which, by the way, could use your help. They're on a tour right now across the country with Riley Gaines and others trying to raise money to fight some of these legal battles. So if you want to donate to a good cause, Independent Women's Forum. See you guys next time.